Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It is the Thursday, April 2nd, 2026 episode of The Marco Jure Show. Thank you for tuning in to hear today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best of radio, informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go. I want to break down President Trump's 18-minute speech from yesterday evening's address to the nation. There's so many different things he said that we need to discuss and, of course, go over in much detail. But I want to ask you, the listener, those of you that may have listened to it yesterday evening, what did you think about it? Did it assure you that President Trump is working for America? Did it assure you that the war will be ending anytime soon? That we're making great progress in this war? Or was it full of delusion and baseless information? Now, I was a bit shocked to hear him say several things throughout the evening that really didn't make any sense to me, especially for me, somebody who follows this very, very closely. But let's take a listen to what President Trump had to say. We'll break this down very clearly so everybody understands, and then we'll try to come to a real conclusion about what is to take place next, which I think most Americans would like to hear. This is President Trump beginning his speech yesterday evening. Let's take a listen to clip one.
As we speak this evening, it's been just 1 month since the United States military began Operation Epic Fury, targeting the world's #1 state sponsor of terror, Iran. In these past 4 weeks, our armed forces have delivered swift, decisive, overwhelming victories on the battlefield. Victories like few people have ever seen before. Tonight, Iran's Navy is gone. Their Air Force is in ruins. Their leaders, most of them terrorist regime they led, are now dead. Their command and control of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is being decimated as we speak. Their ability to launch missiles and drones is dramatically curtailed, and their weapons, factories, and rocket launchers are being blown to pieces.
Okay, so first, right off the bat, one of the first things he says about Iran is completely false. He says Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism in the world. That is simply not true, folks. I've shared this with you several times before. The #1 sponsors of terrorism throughout the world, the CIA did a report just a few years ago. And they tracked since 2000 which group of people were conducting the highest numbers of terror attacks throughout the world. Over 80% were Sunni Muslim groups. Now, it might be important to tell you that the Iranians are Shia Muslim groups. So we're talking about ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, several other these little factions that have broken off from these groups. It's not Iran. They're not the #1 state sponsor of any terrorism. In fact, very few terrorism does come out of Iran. So right off the bat, he's lying about that, but that's the moniker he's got to use. Folks, this is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. We've got to go in and get them. If we don't take them down, there'll be terrorism all over the world. Now, am I saying Iran is completely benign and innocent in every category? Of course not. But to label them the #1 state sponsor of terrorism is a complete and utter lie. Our own CIA has announced this. They have produced results on this. 25 years worth of data. And again, they're nowhere near even the top 10, folks. So let's just be very clear about that. Then he goes on to talk about how we've had victories few have ever seen. I guess we've never seen victories before. The way Trump talks about it. Says the Navy, the Air Force are now gone. Okay, fine. I'm willing to grant that to you. It's gone. Their leaders are dead. The IRGC, they're all gone. The country should be falling apart based on what he's telling us. So that brings me to my next point of the question. If everything is decimated in Iran, if we destroy the Navy, the military, these victories are something like we've never seen out of a textbook before, haven't seen in any movie in Hollywood, why are they still fighting? How are they still able to fire off missiles? Why haven't they surrendered? Why haven't they asked for a ceasefire yet? Now, we've come out and claimed that they have been asking for this. There's no sign of that whatsoever. In fact, every time you talk to the Iranians, they said, no, we're not in communication with you at all. We're not in negotiations of any sort. So if we are beating them to this degree, leaders dying, Navy, Air Force gone, the victories are something fantastical like we've never seen before, we're depleting their stockpiles and what have you, why does the war need to continue to go on? This is why I'm asking you, is President Trump delusional? Is he just high in his own supply of lies? I don't know what's going on here, but it doesn't seem to make any bit of any sense. So let's move on to the next point here. Again, there's so many of these that we can go over. But now he starts talking about Venezuela and how key Venezuela was. Let's continue on with clip 2.
Before discussing this current situation, I also want to thank our troops for the masterful job they did in taking the country of Venezuela in a matter of minutes. That hit was quick, lethal, violent, and respected by everyone all over the world. After rebuilding our military during my first term, we have by far the strongest military anywhere in the world. And now we're working along with Venezuela and are in a true sense joint venture partners. We're getting along incredibly well in the production and sale of massive amounts of oil and gas, the second largest reserves on earth after the United States of America. We're now totally independent of the Middle East, and yet we are there to help. We don't have to be there. We don't need their oil. We don't.
Okay, good. Let's pause here. First of all, Venezuela. He's saying everyone applauded what took place in Venezuela. Number one, that was a war crime. We didn't follow any procedure of extradition to take Maduro and give him a fair trial at all. No, we entered the country in the middle of the night. We killed about 100 people, abducted him and his wife. I don't know what his wife has to do with any of this, by the way. Okay, nonetheless. Then we drop him on these bogus drug charges, that he's this big drug kingpin. When was he ever a drug kingpin? And why does over 90% of all the drugs that enters the United States come out of Mexico? That's another big question I have. But will it ever get answered? Of course not. This is the way people have to perceive it. He's this drug kingpin. All the fentanyl is coming in from Venezuela, apparently. Now, if we look at any reports, especially coming out of the government, they'll tell you Venezuela is not even anywhere close to the top of that list of drug smuggling inside the United States. Very little, if any. And by the way, it would only probably be cocaine, if anything. They're mules for the Colombians, but that drug tends to go into West Africa, then goes into Europe that way. That's how that drug is smuggled through that country. There's no evidence that Maduro is this drug kingpin who's sending drugs to the United States that's poisoning and killing Americans that are using it willfully. Not anything of the sort. And I still have no idea how we can charge him with owning machine guns in a separate country. And who are these leaders that approved of this? Who are the ones that commanded this operation? Of course, now we're taking the oil, we're taking the gold, we'll take other resources from that region. By the way, I think he said something a little incorrect there. He said it's the second largest reserve. It's actually the largest reserve of crude oil inside the world. It has 303 billion barrels of oil sitting under the ground there. Now, how quickly you get that out is another story. They need the infrastructure in order to do that, but we're starting to do that. And as I said, it was going to be a very costly adventure to do that. But this is where we are. We're taking their oil, we're taking the gold, we're taking the silver, we're taking all these other, butane, whatever we get from them. And we just take it, and Delcy Rodriguez says, fine, go ahead and do it. But we're talking about taking a world leader in the middle of the night. What if something like that were to happen to President Trump? What would we say about that? An Air Force team comes in the middle of the night to D.C., takes President Trump and Melania out and takes them to another country? What would we say about that? Again, without any due process, without any following of international law or extradition, which we completely ignored. We actually followed extradition when we arrested Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez. He brought in some 400 tons of cocaine into the United States under his watch. What did we do? We followed extradition. We put the DOJ, the State Department, in positions where they could reach their government. We presented evidence. That country looked at the evidence. They turned him over to us where he could obviously be held in a court of law and found guilty of that. That's the proper means to do it. If we were serious about what Maduro was doing, by the way, I view that nothing more than a decapitation strike whatsoever. But that's what we would do. So how can we sit here and say that everyone around the world said how great of an operation that was? Well, there probably were people that said that. They're not following the rule of law, though. Certainly we didn't. Anyways, let's continue.
Need anything they have, but we're there to help our allies. Tonight, I want to provide an update on the tremendous progress our warriors have made in Iran and discuss why Operation Epic Fury is necessary for the safety of America and the security of the free world. From the very first day I announced my campaign for president in 2015, I have vowed that I would never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. This fanatical regime has been chanting death to America, death to Israel for 47 years. Their proxies were behind the murder of 241 Americans in the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut.
Okay, let's pause for a second. First of all, that's a complete lie. It wasn't Hezbollah or the Iranians backing that at all. Number one, he's talking about the Beirut barracks bombing of the Marines, killing 241 of them. First of all, folks, that was the Amal group inside of Lebanon. It has no ties whatsoever to Iran. Let's just make that very clear. But again, they get jumbled in. They say Iran was behind it, but they are not. So we need to stop saying this, all right? And that was after we, the United States, lobbed missiles into Lebanon that attack took place. And then, of course, President Reagan decided to take us out of there, said we should not even be in this region. His Secretary of Defense, Cap Weinberger, said, what are we doing in this region? They don't want us here, Mr. President. Let's get out of there. And again, what did Reagan do? He took us out. That's how we solved that problem. So if they don't need us in this region, why are we in this region? Why do we have bases all spread out through these Gulf Arab states if there's no reason for us to be there, if we're not relying on their oil, their liquefied natural gas, any other resources that come out of the region? If it's so insignificant, why are we there in the first place? And let's be very clear. When they shout death to America, death to Israel, they are referring to the government. How do I know this? Because I've listened to their leaders say exactly just that. Their issue isn't with the American people. Their issue is with the American government. Their issue is with the Israeli government. So we need to be very clear about what's taking place here, 6,000 miles away, that people are chanting death to America in the streets, as if that's a reason to go to war. Maybe like saying in the old Soviet Union, they're saying death to America, we need to go now and invade Moscow. I mean, it's ridiculous. Let's continue.
Slaughter of hundreds of our service members with roadside bombs. They were involved in the attack on the USS Cole, and they carried out the countless other heinous acts, including the just horrible, bloody atrocities of October 7th in Israel, something that most people have never seen anything like it.
So now he tries to say that the roadside bombs were this Iranian invention, apparently, even though we, the United States, are the ones that showed them how to do that. Again, I just thought I'd share that with you. Then he tries to lump in October 7th with Iran, which, again, I have no evidence, I can't find any, that we have information that the Iranians were behind October 7th. Yeah, I think we should look into actually Qatar and what they've sent to Hamas inside the Gaza Strip just before that attack took place. Just thought I'd be honest with you and share that with you. So we've got so many things he's saying right now, but he's not proving any type of imminent threat that shares with us that we need to go into Iran right now. He's saying it's a fanatical regime, number one state sponsor of terrorism, they shout death to America. Where is the threat then? If this regime is so fanatical and wants to take down the United States, where is the evidence then? Where is the evidence that they're going to be firing ballistic missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles at the United States? Where's the evidence they have a nuclear bomb? Or would be creating one within 2 weeks? Everything is always 2 weeks. Do you ever notice this? 2 weeks to build a bomb. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We've been hearing this for what? 35 years at least? Probably longer than that. Totally ignoring the fact that the previous Ayatollah, Ali Khamenei, issued 2 fatwas back in 2003 saying we're not building a nuclear bomb. I mean, it's as clear as mud, folks. They're not building a bomb. Even our own intelligence department's assessment from Tulsi Gabbard has shared with us they're not building a nuclear bomb. She just clarified that to Congress not too long ago. But now the next step is what? It's the ballistic missiles. That's the big problem. Take a listen to this.
They were also rapidly building a vast stockpile of conventional ballistic missiles and would soon have had missiles that could reach the American homeland, Europe, and virtually any other place on Earth. Iran's strategy was so obvious. They wanted to produce as many missiles as possible, and they did, with the longest range possible, and they had some weapons that nobody believed they had. We just learned that out. We took them out. We took them all out so that no one would really dare stop them. And they raced for a nuclear bomb, a nuclear weapon like nobody's ever seen before. They were right at the doorstep.
Okay, there's, again, no evidence for any of this, that they had intercontinental ballistic missiles that could reach the United States. Some of their ballistic missiles can reach Eastern Europe. That is correct. But let's take it back a second. Let's say this is true. They want to start attacking Europe or the West or what have you. Why are they attacking Europe right now? The furthest they've attacked is Cyprus. Why are they attacking Cyprus? Because Israel and the United States have bases there. That's why they're hitting it. They're hitting our bases in the region. That's why that's happening. That's why the Gulf Arab states are getting hit right now. They're not just attacking the Gulf Arab states, they're attacking our military installations in these countries right now. And of course, they're reacting in kind when their oil fields get hit, their desalination plants get hit. They respond in kind with hitting, for example, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, the UAE, Saudi Arabia. These are the countries now that are facing this dilemma because they're aiding and abetting the United States to continue to go on and attack them. Notice they're not attacking Spain right now. Just thought I'd share that with you. They're not attacking Italy right now, or the UK. Why? Because they're saying, hey, we're not getting involved in this war. We don't want a part of this war. We want nothing to do with it. So we need to be very clear again about what's taking place. Why are the Iranians attacking these countries? Because they're aiding and abetting the United States. That's the only assessment we can come up with from this, folks. He then goes on to talk about the JCPOA. This is a very short clip. Let's take a listen.
There would have been no Middle East and no Israel right now, in my opinion, the opinion of a lot of great experts, had I not terminated that terrible deal. And I was so honored to do it. I was so proud to do it. It was so bad right from the beginning. Essentially, I did what no other president was willing to do. They made mistakes, and I am correcting them.
So let's break this one down. The JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. This is under Obama, 2015. He came out and he said, okay, let's build a legal binding agreement with the Iranians. And as a result of it, they came up with this plan. Other countries signed on to it. This plan allowed United States weapons inspectors to go into Iran, go into their nuclear facilities. Think Fordow, think Isfahan, Natanz, all these locations. And they could inspect to make sure they're not building a nuclear weapon. Now, he goes on for a little bit longer and he says something about how we gave them billions of dollars worth of cash. We just sent it to them. It was a horrible deal and what have you. The money, folks, that we gave them was not just the United States taxpayer dollars. We didn't just go to the Federal Reserve and say, give us $1.9 billion. We're going to give it to the Iranians and hope that they don't build this nuclear bomb. What it was we unfroze their assets and we gave them their money back. It was their money. Now, some people might say that's really stupid if they're building a nuclear bomb or want to build a nuclear bomb. They have this capacity. But we didn't just hand them $1.9 billion, folks. Let's be very clear about what took place here. Part of the deal was, listen, you enter this agreement with us, you let us come and inspect your nuclear sites, you agree to a certain level of enrichment, you agree not to build nuclear bombs, we'll unfreeze your assets and give them to you. The Iranians agreed to it. And why wouldn't they? They have no intention of building a nuclear bomb as is. So there's that. Here's the next problem. Let's say Trump didn't like the JCPOA, which he ripped up in his first term. And he was so happy to do so. Fine. Then why didn't you replace it with something else? Why didn't you get another proposal that was more effective than what was previously agreed to? He just ripped it up and had nothing to replace it with? Why? That would have given them the ability to build a nuclear bomb, because now they're not legally binded to anything. Just like the Russians right now can do whatever they want with their nuclear technology and development. They're under no precursor to stop this. Why aren't we replacing New START with something else? Why aren't we replacing the INF Treaty, which Trump also ripped up in his first term in 2019 with the Russians, with something else? Especially if this is a tyrannical, fanatical group of the number one state sponsors of terrorism, why would you rip up a legal binding agreement to stop them? This is one of the things that would actually have stopped them. Now, some people argue this agreement, once it ends, it allows them the ability to build a nuclear bomb. Fine, but then you come up with another treaty. Just like, again, we saw New START came after START 2, there was START 1. There's other agreements that come afterwards. There's other treaties that succeed previous ones after their term has expired. Let's be very clear about that. But we rip this up and we have nothing to replace it with? I mean, folks, that just seems very, very ridiculous to me. I think you all would agree on that. If we're really this serious that Iran is going to build this bomb and kill us, or use it to kill the Israelis, or the West, or what have you, or terrorize their neighbors, which, by the way, they haven't invaded any country since the 1700s, why wouldn't we go out and replace this with something else? That's my big question. And again, why didn't they build something under the Biden administration then? If they're this close, they're always 2 weeks away, so if they're this fanatical, why wouldn't they have built something under the Biden administration and used it? How is it that we have no information, no intelligence that they're building a nuclear bomb even right now? Tulsi Gabbard I believe it was last March, came out and said, the Iranians are not building a nuclear weapon. Trump was asked about this. He said, I don't really care what she says. Okay, you don't care what the director of national intelligence, who is obviously briefing the head of counterterrorism, that would be Joe Kent. I mean, she's getting the raw information that briefs you, Mr. President. And you don't believe a word she's saying? You don't believe our own intel that we collect throughout the world? Who do you believe that? Well, it's obviously Mr. Netanyahu. That's what it is. It's Netanyahu saying they're 2 weeks away, 2 months away. We've been hearing this from him since, what, 1996, at least? Everything's always a month, 2 months away. We got to take him out right now. And again, I'll just refer you, ladies and gentlemen, to 7 countries in 5 years. General Wesley Clark said this back in 2007 to us. He got it right from the Department of Defense. We're going to take down 7 countries in 5 years, and guess which country was the last country on that list? Well, it was the Iranians. Which countries hasn't been taken over yet? It's Iran. So Netanyahu probably understands that politically he's done after this. I think he understands that his time as a politician is going to be over pretty soon, and he wants to be the one that foresees what takes place in Iran, which would likely reshape what happens inside the Middle East. Because once you take out Iran, Lebanon has no way to defend themselves. The Hamas militants have no way to defend themselves, largely. But no one is going to stop you. No one's going to stop you from getting Greater Israel, which, by the way, they've added now Saudi Arabia to that list, Jordan to that list, part of Pakistan, part of Turkey, much of Syria, much of Lebanon. Look what's happening in Lebanon, too. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But all this, folks, behind the scenes is happening, and most Americans are not paying one bit of attention to it. So President Trump goes out and he offers this ultimatum again as to what is taking place now. Let's take a listen.
The new group is less radical and much more reasonable. Yet if during this period of time no deal is made, we have our eyes on key targets If there is no deal, we are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously. We have not hit their oil, even though that's the easiest target of all, because it would not give them even a small chance of survival or rebuilding.
Okay. So he goes on to say the quiet part out loud. This is what I foresee taking place. And again, I see it taking place probably this weekend. I'll just tell it to you how it is. He said if they don't agree, this group is less radical. First of all, there's no evidence of that whatsoever. Everything I've heard about the new Ayatollah, he's much more of a hardliner than what his father was. His father, the one that said you can't build a nuclear bomb. That's the guy we killed. All right, so where does this leave us now? Now, Just the News has an article out saying that Trump now vows escalated attacks for the next 2 to 3 weeks to send Iran into the Stone Age. Yes, he said that later in the speech as well. I don't know what that means exactly. Is it just going to blow it to smithereens? I have no idea. But he said in this primetime address that America's core strategic objectives were nearing completion, and he planned to escalate attacks on the regime for the next 2 to 3 weeks in a bid to force Tehran's capitulation. Stating very clearly, our objectives are very clear and simple. We are systematically dismantling the regime's ability to threaten America or project power outside of their borders. That means eliminating Iran's navy, which, again, I didn't know their navy was this significant, ladies and gentlemen, but I guess it is, which is now absolutely destroyed, hurting their air force and their missile program at levels never seen before, and annihilating their defense industrial base. We've done it all. So then why do we need to continue this war for another 2 to 3 weeks? If all of this is absolutely destroyed, this is what he's saying. It's his own words. We're going to attack them still because of their ballistic missile program? Why do they have ballistic missiles, Mr. President? Probably because they don't have a nuclear bomb, like many of the other countries that we are referring to. Let's just keep it at that. So, where does this leave us? You have to understand something. Tomorrow, Good Friday, as Holy Week goes on, guess what happens tomorrow? The markets are closed. And what an opportune time to strike, folks. We come and say, listen, we're just going to go for another couple weeks. It'll be all over. And now we hit them like we've never hit them before. I don't know what good that'll do. The Iranians are ready for this. They seem very much capable to handle this. But he goes on to say these actions will cripple Iran military, crush their ability to support terrorist proxies, and deny, I don't know what he's saying here. I'm pleased to say that these core strategic objectives are nearing completion. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Age where they belong. Oh, yeah. So this is what's taking place. We are going to hit them again. Make no mistake about it. He said nothing about leaving the region. But we are going to attack them. We're going to hit these, for example, their energy infrastructure, their energy grid. We'll hit that. We will hit their oil fields. We'll probably hit their desalinization plants. And as a result of that, you'll see Israel get hit much further. They will continue to strike on Israel. They will continue to pound the Gulf Arab states as well. And the Strait of Hormuz will be closed. Now, I think he covered the Strait of Hormuz just briefly yesterday. He didn't really mention it too much, except in mentioning that he wanted other nations to come in and open it up for themselves. But this is the issue we're coming up with now. He's saying, and he said this yesterday, my first preference was always the path of diplomacy. Yet the regime continued their relentless quest for nuclear weapons and rejected every attempt at an agreement. That's a complete lie. Last June, they were going to give us everything we wanted. And we decided to let Israel bomb them, and of course we bombed them as well, which they retaliated afterwards. Trump also indicated that Iran had simply relocated their nuclear facilities following the June 2025 Operation Midnight Hammer, and indicated that he viewed the move as an indication that the country would never abandon their nuclear ambitions. Again, where's the evidence? Is this just like the Iraqi weapons of mass destruction? This is just their ambition is to build nuclear technology now? No, what they have said, clearly, was that they're not going to stop any enrichment, but they would agree to a certain level. What our proposal to them was, you cannot enrich at all. We'll enrich for you. That means, therefore, we control what they can do. Now, again, there's certain levels of enrichment necessary for society, folks, for medical and what have you. But this idea that we're just going to simply come in there and tell them exactly what to do, I think they said to the hell with it. We're not going to simply just give up our opportunity to do what we can do for ourselves, but we will agree to the prevention of creating a nuclear weapon. That's what they agreed to. We didn't like that. Then we also threw in the ballistic missiles in there too. And they said, no, we're not going to stop building our ballistic missiles. That's the only defense we have because we don't have a nuclear bomb. So now Trump is calling out now for this swift, decisive, overwhelming victories against Iran, the ongoing conflict. I don't know what further we'll hit. We've hit well over 12,000 different targets as of right now. But it looks like this is going to go on for quite some time, folks. So you got to be prepared for this. I always tell you, make sure you're staying prepped. Always food, water, ammunition, gold, have currency at hand, tangible currency. You got to be ready for anything. Because if the shelves on the store start going bare, you're going to wish you had something prepped in advance. I always tell you, at least 3 to 6 months worth of food you should have stored up. You can get that at many different sites. Bottles of water, store them up as well. You got to be ready for anything. Generator, gasoline, anything you need to be self-sufficient, folks. I tell you right now to do it. Because we haven't seen the end of this. And again, the economy is going to respond in kind. We'll talk more economy tomorrow, as we always do on our Friday broadcast. But this is where we are now. So again, I'm assessing that this weekend, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm telling you this weekend is probably going to be, something is going to start taking place this weekend. Because the Iranians are not dealing with the United States. They're not in communication. They're not agreeing to anything. And they're not capitulating to any ultimatum that President Trump is talking about. So he gave them 10 days. What do we always know President Trump does, by the way? He said, I prefer diplomacy. No, you don't. We were in talks with them twice. We were setting up meetings to speak again. And of course, we ended up bombing them every time. So the Iranians don't believe a word he's saying. Now, they may believe that he's going to attack again. That he's going to hit energy infrastructure, oil fields, oil wells, desalination plants. They believe that. But they don't believe that he's going to be one to hold his word. That's what I'm saying right now. So we've got to get ready for this. And this is going to make things much, much worse. Because if we start hitting oil infrastructure inside the Middle East, you're going to have 20% of the global oil supply simply just not there anymore. And then you'll see the price per barrel for oil start to rise significantly. I haven't checked the price today. We'll go over all that tomorrow. I'm sure it's still elevated over $100, though. And by the way, we saw the markets dip a little bit today as well. Since he made the announcement we'll still be continuing this war, most people were hoping that this war would be coming to a swift end, but there's no end in sight. Which I say, why? If we don't need to be in this region, if they're decimated, if they're fighting so much less because the stockpiles are diminished, why are we still fighting? Why are we still there? Why are we still trying to hit these targets? Why are we sending the USS George H.W. Bush to the region if the war is ending in a couple weeks? Nobody can answer these questions. Why? Because, again, the war is continuing on. Why are we sending the 10,000 troops to the region? What are they going to be doing there? Are they going to take Kark Island? Are they going to try to extract highly enriched uranium? He never said anything about that yesterday. So this just tells me, folks, look at President Trump and what he's doing versus what he's telling us. Because the two things are very much opposite right now. And again, I want to believe him. I want to believe that we're in this for good reasons, but nothing I have found indicates that we're in this for good reasons. Nothing. And everything he's saying, diplomacy, he's never been one for diplomacy with the Iranians. He's never even been for diplomacy with Venezuela. Look what happened in Venezuela. But what he committed was perfidy, ladies and gentlemen. That is a war crime. Go look it up if you don't believe me. We were in talks with him. We were talking about speaking the following week. And in the meantime, we betrayed that confidence by allowing Israel to go in and bomb them and kill the Ayatollah and his home, killing much of his family, killing much of the military brass in an unprovoked war. He never provided any imminent threat, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing of why we should be in this war or anything that would allow the War Powers Act to be used. So this is a big mess. Most Americans do not want this war. Yes, you got some of your hardliners, MAGA people that just will, anything Trump says is fantastic with them. They look nothing up. They do no research. And by the way, if there was a legitimate threat, then yes, of course I would want the president to respond. But there is no sign of that, folks. Let's just be very clear about that. And sometimes you got to call a spade a spade. It's out of Quartz magazine. Some people are getting rich off this war, as every war always allows people. Look at this. It says the Pentagon signed a 7-year framework agreement with Boeing and Lockheed Martin to triple production capacity of seekers for the Patriot Advanced Capability. Yep. Look what's going on here. Boeing manufactures the Seekers, which enable PAC-3 interceptors to identify, track, and defeat threats, including hostile aircrafts, hypersonics, and ballistic and cruise missiles, both of which the Iranians all have. Yep. According to Boeing, Lockheed Martin is the prime contractor for the PAC-3 MSE interceptor itself. Yep. So look at this. This money they're getting now. Yep, because, again, we're depleted right now. We've got to start building much quicker than we would have prior to this. And what happens? Well, we need that $200 billion Trump has requested to rebuild because we've given to Israel or Ukraine or whomever, South Korea, Japan, and we got to get this money back. That's what's taking place right now. This is why you're seeing these contracts beginning to burgeon and come into fruition right now. It says here that the agreement is part of President Trump's administration's Arsenal of Freedom initiative to strengthen the defense industry base. Under the framework, Boeing, the Defense Department, and Lockheed Martin would begin production and ramp up and negotiate towards a formal multi-year contract award later this year. So when General Smedley Butler said war is a racket, this is exactly what he's talking about. Right? You go to war, you bomb some people, into the Stone Age, if you will. And what happens once you run out of those missiles, because, again, you didn't plan this very clearly? Well, you got to start building more now. Again, we thought we would be in and out just like in Venezuela. Kill the Ayatollah, everything would fall apart. We bring in Pavlovi, he takes over, he gives us the oil, he destroys the missile program, he destroys the nuclear program, and he gets to stay in power. Israel will be free to do whatever the hell they want in the region. That's also the big part about this. Israeli hegemony, U.S. hegemony in the region. But it didn't happen because we underestimated the Iranians. We underestimated a country of 93 million people. We underestimated their ballistic missile program and what they could do with it. And by the way, folks, just so we're very clear, the idea that the Russians and the Chinese would simply allow Iran just to be decimated and allow this other regime to come out and, again, destroy that relationship. Look what Iran is doing for BRICS right now. A lot of people aren't talking about this, but look what they're doing with BRICS right now. They're propping up the Chinese yuan. China loves this. And you think we're just going to let them fall apart? You think that both countries would allow that to happen? They see what's going on. They know exactly that Iran has not really been decimated, although we're hitting targets. I'm not denying any of that. But the government itself is not falling apart. And we have spent a lot of money shooting these interceptor missiles, the Arrow 2, Arrow 3, particularly inside of Israel, the THAAD missiles, the Patriot missiles. We have depleted our stockpiles. And as a result of that, we need to get building right away. So we weren't anticipating any of this to happen. We thought this would be a one and done in an hour. We claim victory, which President Trump is trying to do right now. Again, fine. Claim victory. Pull out of the region. I could care less. Just get us the hell out of there. Don't put 10,000 Marines or sailors' lives at risk because we want to make a statement now. But again, expect something to happen this weekend coming up. And by the way, like I told you before, people get rich off war. And again, these big defense contractors, they continue to make a hell of a lot of money. It says here that the Boeing deal follows a separate framework agreement the Defense Department signed with Lockheed Martin in January to increase annual PAC-3 MSE production capacity from approximately 600 to 2,000 interceptors. That's because of the way they build them. Lockheed said in 2025 it delivered 620 PAC-3 MSEs, exceeding the prior year by more than 20%. Yeah. The Pentagon also announced more than half a dozen multi-year weapons framework agreements since the start of the year, including deals with Lockheed Martin to expand THAAD interceptor production. Again, why is it happening? Well, because again, we're completely depleted, and that's why we've asked South Korea and Japan to give us some of these missiles back to them. Yeah, there it is. There it is. So that's the reality of the situation. We wouldn't have to have these big contracts right now if everything was going just fine. If we were confident that the Iranians were, again, depleting their own stockpile or are very diminished or that they would be running out of missiles soon, we wouldn't be doing this right now. This has nothing to do with bolstering up the military. We're simply out of these munitions. We've got to start rebuilding very quickly. Otherwise, this war ends very, very fast. So I think President Trump sees that. He understands this. And that's why we're in the situation we're in right now. Moving on to another front right now. We've got Israel now attacking Lebanon right now. The Prime Minister of Lebanon, Nawal Salam, said that on Thursday there was no end in sight to a war that had already displaced over 1 million people in southern Lebanon just over the last month, as families are now fleeing Israeli strikes as they were exhausted by these repeated rounds of conflict, by the way. We're also seeing many people killed in the region, folks. I hate having to tell you that, but that's the truth of the matter. Let me see here. I think we have... Let me see how many people were actually killed, though. I want to say it was over 1,000 people. Maybe it doesn't... Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. 1,300 people have been killed in these airstrikes. And about a fifth of Lebanon's population has been completely displaced. Israel has now issued evacuation orders covering around 50% of the Lebanese territory as time goes on. By the way, these include areas where there's 9,000 Lebanese Christians living in clusters or border towns who told Reuters that they were determined to stay despite the advanced military operations. By the way, why is Israel inside Lebanon right now? Why are they trying to take everything south of the Litani River? Is this another war of aggression? What is the purpose of this? Are they defending themselves? Now, we're told everyone in Hezbollah is a terrorist. Again, I implore everybody to look up the history of Hezbollah and why they formed back in the early 1980s. This is the problem, though. No one ever rebukes what Israel's doing or the United States is doing in the region. This is why you have the Houthis now firing into southern Israel. This is why you have Hezbollah firing into Israel. Because they understand they are at risk of, again, being taken over. People are being killed right now. 1,300 people killed. Has anybody in the news media said anything about this? Is anyone upset about any of this? How about the Christians? How about the churches that have been destroyed? Silence. Silence from your talking heads, ladies and gentlemen. Unbelievable. This isn't a war of self-defense. This is a war of expanding greater Israel. Now, it says here the positions of Israeli officials and the practices of their army reveal far-reaching goals, including a significant expansion into the occupation of Lebanese territories. Again, that's illegal. Just like their presence in the West Bank and Gaza are also illegal under UN Charter. Dangerous talk about establishing buffer zones or security belts and the displacement of more than 1 million Lebanese, is what Salam has said. Israel's assertion is that the military will retain control of southern Lebanon has fueled fears of long-term occupation after 2 decades of Israeli presence ending in 2000. Yeah. And this is what it all comes down to. Taking land. You look over here at Iran. Don't worry about what we're doing just to the north of us. Oh, sure, we'll fire into Iran sometime. Well, we'll take out the Ayatollah. We'll start this war and let the United States come in and finish it off. Now we're going to move on to something else. We're going to move on to taking everything south of the Litani. Classic bait and switch, folks, and no one says a damn thing about it. No one says anything about what's taking place in Gaza right now. I talked to you last week. I saw a tent city blown up with a missile. No one says a word about that. No one says anything about the lack of humanitarian aid still going into Gaza or the tens of people that are killed there every single day. Not a word. Not a word since the ceasefire, by the way. It's almost like the Israelis have honored their ceasefire, which they never have. And by the way, they're supposed to be in a ceasefire right now with Lebanon. How's that going? Yeah, just ask the 1 million people that have been displaced from their homes and the people that refuse to leave right now. Yep, look at this. It says Israel now has continued to carry on strikes on Lebanon after A 2024 ceasefire ended its last war with Hezbollah, keeping troops stationed on 5 hilltop positions in southern Lebanon. There you go. There you go. No one says a damn thing about this. It's appalling. Absolutely appalling this is taking place right now. By the way, folks, some very important information that I think you'll all like very much. This is on the New York Post. Says Trump fires Pam Bondi as Attorney General. Now, this isn't official just yet, but this is what's being said from behind the scenes right now. It says Bondi was at the White House to attend President Trump's address to the nation on the Iran war, and earlier had accompanied the president to the Supreme Court to watch oral arguments in a major birthright citizenship case. Now, Fox News said that Trump would replace Bondi with Deputy Attorney Todd Blanche. Yeah, he's just like her, so I don't know what difference that would make. And put him in as the interim Attorney General for the time being. Now, whether or not he would be confirmed by the Senate, I doubt it, but perhaps. But Trump is expected to soon make a formal announcement as to what's going on, should time go on. She's been horrible, by the way. Absolutely, and I had such high hopes for her. I think many people did too. That she would come in and really take hold of the injustice, the government malfeasance, the crime that is rampant across the country, and she's done little to nothing about these things. Now, the White House didn't directly address the report, so only time will tell if this is true or not. But President Trump, as of late, was praising Bondi for God knows what. But we've got to look at what she's done. President Trump expressed lots of frustration previously with Bondi's lack of aggressiveness and things like prosecuting foes, such as FBI Director James Comey. She had a massive debacle with all that. Massive debacle was going on with Russiagate. Those people should be charged. John Brennan, Andy McCabe, Obama, Hillary Clinton, they should all be under much scrutiny right now. Instead, she tries to hire this attorney. She does it the wrong way, so they don't even see the case, and she doesn't do anything to replace it. It's unbelievable. It's as if she has no idea what she's doing, which, again, is shocking. Then you also look at the White House handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. She originally came out and said she had the client list. Then she didn't have the client list. Nobody knows what's going on. Then it would be done in different stages. She originally does phase 1, where she has a bunch of these moronic podcasters holding a binder full of redacted information. It's like, this is phase 1. Wonderful. Then, of course, we get phase 2 eventually. Again, much of that is highly redacted. We get a little sliver of what's going on. Then we get a huge jump of about 3 million pages. Same thing, highly redacted. We don't get any names. We actually get the victims' names in there, which I shouldn't be doing. People are upset. People are asking, why are you not arresting anybody? You're the leading law enforcement officer in the country. Why are you not arresting anybody? Anyone that looks through them can see that this is very problematic. People are talking about murdering people. They're talking about children, child exploitation, prostitution, trafficking them, sex rituals. What are we talking about here? And no one could be arrested? Why are you redacting names then if these people are fine to say these things? There's nothing of any consequence in this. So there's so many issues with the way she's handling herself. I just don't think Todd Blanche will be any different. I don't know anyone that would be. But as time goes on, you know, she's really let us down. And she's been lackluster. She's not going after the right people. She's gone after nobody that was a part of taking down innocent people on January 6th, for example. Any of these people, any of these organizations that work inside our government. Any of these groups that target, for example, Christians, particularly Catholics attending Latin Mass. Why are we having the FBI go do this? Has Kash Patel rid his organization of this? People need to be held accountable, and we're not holding these people inside the government accountable. In fact, it looks like we're actually protecting people that are committing heinous crimes, particularly against children inside the United States. By the way, has anyone gone down in the Biden administration? How many millions of people did the Biden administration let in the country? 12 to 20 million. You can't look at anything Alejandro Mayorkas has done. How is it that there are NGOs that have allowed people to come in the United States? They process these people. How about the people donating money to bring these people in the country? Are we not a nation of law and order anymore? No, we get no answers to these things. What we should have done, what President Trump should have done from the start, is what I said long ago. This brings me to my next article out of Breitbart. Ken Paxton. Why would we not bring in a stalwart conservative out of a state like Texas and bring in a Ken Paxton to the White House? Bring him to D.C. Let him, the same guy who sued the Biden administration, who held with federal law, enforcing Texas's southern border, by the way. Why would we bring him in? Why he was overlooked, again, is beyond me. But this brings me to the next point. Are people sick about the status quo that we're seeing, especially inside the U.S. Senate, that needs serious change? Now, over the last couple of months, the Senate has failed rightly in front of our eyes to pass the single most important piece of legislation in front of Congress. That would be the Save America Act. I said before, why is John Thune sitting on his hands? Why is Mike Johnson sitting on his hands? Why are they not working together with their slim majority as it is to get this passed? Now, despite President Trump's full backing and overwhelming support from Americans on both sides of the aisle, by the way, we're doing nothing about this. Now's the time to act when you have the support, when you have the people in power. And at the same time, they continue to fail properly to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which remains shut down to this day. We've got a debacle with transportation right now that we can't get people like TSA agents funded. We've now got to bring in ICE agents. ICE agents who are supposed to be on the streets getting illegal aliens off the street and deporting them. Now they're checking people's bags at airports. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. But to enact President Trump's agenda, the Senate needs serious change. What do I mean by that? The clear start to this would be electing someone like a Ken Paxton. And by the way, he's running for U.S. Senate in Texas, as many of you know. And he is a battle-hardened conservative who weathered a politicized impeachment trial against him in the state of Texas and came out even stronger now. For years, he's been behind President Trump, fighting for, again, the support of President Trump, his agenda. He's been against the Islamization of Texas and what's happening there. He's probably one of the few people that would do anything about it. Again, against the left's open border policy. We've seen that. And his work against the Biden administration, suing the Biden administration, against woke Democratic insane policies. This is the guy you want. He's ready to get to work. He's ready to do what is necessary to support the president inside the U.S. Senate, and it's what Texas needs. This is who we need out of Texas. We don't need a John Cornyn or a Ted Cruz. Again, both do-nothings. Paxton is the guy to go with. We need change. We need people that are not going to come out in support of, in Ted Cruz's case, the number one reason why he wanted to get to the Senate was to do everything he could to help Israel. This is a person coming out of Texas saying this to you. Does he not realize he's elected by the people of Texas? I don't know. Who knows? He surely doesn't mind getting that AIPAC money. I'll just tell it to you that way. By the way, so does John Cornyn, too. But John Cornyn, again, is a lackluster senator. He does very little. What has he done for us out of Texas? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But this heated primary runoff with the four-term incumbent John Cornyn, very well known in Texas, virtually has unlimited financial support. But here's the thing. The voters want something different. They want more now. They're starting to see what's going on around them. Hey, we elect these conservatives and nothing is getting done. John Cornyn is considered coming out against the Save America Act. Now, Washington has always, gone one way or another with this. But now is the time to act. Now is the time to get this passed. And I think the Texans have really understood now that it was someone like a Paxton who would lead the charge on the Save America Act, not a John Cornyn. He was fighting for his country. We used to call our states countries. Isn't that interesting, folks? Way back in, especially the antebellum South, or North for that matter, your state was almost like where your country, if you will. That's how much, obviously, pride in your state you had back in those days. But you would basically say you're from the state of, wherever you're from, Virginia, South Carolina, Texas, whatever you wanted to call it. But it was almost like you were from a different country in those days. There was very little movement around the country at that time. But I say this to you because he went out and he protected his state's own borders, which again was part of the country state. Excuse me, the country's borders, rather. So this is the guy you want. This is the guy you want fighting for you. He doesn't want the country to be bombarded with illegal aliens. He doesn't stay silent on that. He doesn't cower away from it. He goes right for it. This is the man set out of the Texas Senate now that's got to come through. And again, I think he would be a very good person to have in D.C. to do this. And again, I hope he stays true to his word. That's all we can ever hope for with these politicians. But he's one of the few people, like a Thomas Massey, that really, really stays to their word, I think. And I think that'll be a big change moving forward to what does it mean to be America first? What does it mean to be America, make America great again? This is what we got to start seeing as time goes on. All right, folks, let's move on. Just a couple minutes remaining in the broadcast today. My goodness, time flies. I hate that the show ends in just an hour. I wish I had 2 hours with you, but we'll try to get through what we can just for today. Let me talk quickly about Chief Justice John Roberts appearing to throw the wrench into Trump's birthright citizenship case. This is an abomination in and of itself, I gotta tell you. I was really hoping that the 6 conservative justices, or 6 conservative appointed justices, I guess we'll call them that now, were going to come out in favor of what President Trump had said, which is exactly as the law is stated. John Sauer did a fantastic job yesterday, again, making President Trump's arguments very clear, using proper data, proper context, the originalism of the Constitution itself. And it seems like Roberts now is skeptical about the 14th Amendment on which birthright citizenship rests, excluding the children of illegal aliens. That's what it's talking about here. Can you bring your children across the border? Can you have children if you come here legally? And are those U.S. citizens? That's the big question here. Now, Sauer said, based on Chinese media reports, he said there are 500 birth tourism companies in the People's Republic of China right now whose business it is to bring in people here to give birth and return to that nation. Now, having said that, this is what Roberts goes on to say, you do agree that has no impact on the legal analysis before us. Now, Sauer, of course, disagrees with him, and instead he respectfully cited that the late Justice Antonin Scalia, again, one of the staunch conservatives and originalists on the Supreme Court, argued that the 19th century Americans did not foresee such things. So in other words, the people who wrote the 14th Amendment did not intend for children of illegal aliens to be born. And by the way, it never says that in any of the language in the 14th Amendment about that. So Roberts fires back, says, well, it certainly wasn't a problem in the 19th century. No kidding. We didn't have a welfare system. We didn't have open borders where we let everybody just simply cross into the country and ultimately stay here and have children. That's a major problem. I think everyone would understand that. But now it's coming to a point where it seems like Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett might side with the liberals and shoot this down. And then what does that mean? Does that mean anyone that could just come across the border, have children, and these are American citizens? Is that what the language in the 14th Amendment tells us? It is not. Never tells us anything of the sort. What it was referring to, specifically in that provision, was that you are of the jurisdiction thereof. If you are someone who comes here illegally, you are not of this jurisdiction. That's the biggest takeaway from all of this. Why is this so difficult for people to understand? I don't understand this. If someone illegally crosses that border, yes, you're allowed various rights under the law. I understand that. But you don't have a right to vote, for example. You don't have a right to purchase a firearm. Your rights are limited, but you still aren't absolved completely of receiving various rights in the Constitution. That is different than what the 14th Amendment tells us. Very much different. You're not of this jurisdiction. You have no allegiance to this country. You're not from this country. So therefore, why would you have children and why would they be considered American citizens? If you are, again, from another country. Why do we have a naturalization process? If you just come here to have children, then why would we have this whole process? If you get here, you get here. But yeah, we do have a process. And again, through it all, Justice Roberts, Justice Barrett have acted as swing votes. So if Roberts' exchange with Sauer serves any indication as to what might take place, might proved true again that they flip-flop and, of course, sided with the Democrats who understand the position on this. They understand that this is why the Democrats want open borders. This is why they want things like such. Because, again, it brings more people in and it allows people to stay in the country. So those people that are here illegally, they have kids. Well, what side are they going to go with? Well, they're obviously going to vote Democratic because that's the party that's protecting them, protecting their parents. This is the problem with it. You don't have any allegiance to this country, by and large, if you come here illegally. And you're siding with policies that don't protect American sovereignty. Folks, I have no other way to say that to you. I hope Justice Roberts, I hope Justice Barrett will come to their senses and realize that yes, the 14th Amendment did not, under any circumstance, allow for illegal aliens, children that are born here, to become American citizens. And I don't think our founding fathers would either. Do you, folks? I didn't think so. That's all the time we have for today's broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for sharing the show with others. I appreciate you when you do that. Folks, make sure you're storing up with being prepped with food, water, ammo, money, gold, tools, medicine, supplies, anything you need to be self-sufficient. Stock up while you can. It's very important right now because we don't know where this war is going. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.